I think in today's world, people are so used to like quick dopamine hits from social media and just instant gratification. And especially, for younger generations, when you see people worth, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars from just having what looks like an easy to do YouTube platform, it makes you think that the road to success is a very short one, or can be. And, I've had the blessing of being around some super successful people on my career path, from music to real estate. And, none of those people that I saw achieve massive success did it overnight. They did it through tremendous hard work and over time, just being consistent and dedicated and driven and never letting up the gas. And I think realizing that to be an expert in any field, you need to be 10 years in. Yeah. They say, whatever you do, I think the Beatles said, like, it might have been Paul McCartney, like, you're not going to be a musician until you've been playing for 10 years. Yeah. So the first 10 years of my real estate career, it wasn't easy peasy. Yeah. There were a lot of down points. And, when I was in New York, starting off renting apartments, not glamorous penthouse apartments. When I first started, I'm renting apartments for $2,500 a month, like just to pay the bills. It's not what you see on Bravo TV shows. Mm-hmm. That real estate is just this easy thing. It's extremely hard. Yeah, it is. And you have to be really precise and keep yourself in check, and don't let yourself just get down in the dumps. Like, I'm a firm believer of the universe and attracting good energy with projecting good energy, because what you put out is what you attract. So if you're like, oh man, nothing's working for me, I can't close a deal. This client that I was working with, I was dreaming of this big commission, they dropped off the planet. Mm-hmm. What do I do? I'm going to quit.
Happens every day.
That is going to just bring more and more negative energy and mishaps into your life. So you have to just have thick skin, roll with the punches, and just know if you put in the hours and dedication, you're going to get out of it what you put in.
Yeah. And I think what you said is, that positive attitude. I can't tell you how many times, I thought I was going to get a deal. Somebody else did it. I thought I was going to get a listing. Somebody else got it. Things happen. You can't, no one's perfect. It's like, This is the up and down. You actually had a unique story. I guess a client or a friend of yours, you were working with them, I guess, buying a house. You weren't involved with the deal. And then something incredible happened after. Do you mind sharing that story?
Yeah. And going back to, energy and projecting and manifesting things. I'm an avid reader. I think I read 70 books last year.
Wow.
I as much as I love music, I have pretty much heard all the songs. I haven't read all the books. Yeah. So I spend a lot of my free time on Audible or reading and just absorbing. And, I love people like Joe Dispenza that preaches this kind of stuff. And, to give you an example of what you just mentioned, I'll tell you a story. I had a famous client, someone I had a great relationship with, was out showing them super expensive properties down here. Found him something in the double-digit million range, and he didn't pull the trigger on it. I had been consistently dealing with him, doing other business deals since that point. And then one day recently, I opened the news and I see the headline that client just bought this place that I showed him 2 years later. And my heart dropped in my stomach. It felt like a slap in the face. It felt like I wasn't good enough to do this. And it felt horrible. And I thought and I debated for a minute. I'm like, should I call this guy and give him a piece of my mind and, remind him of all the ways that I should have deserved this deal? Mm-hmm. Or should I just keep my chin up and keep it moving? Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. I decided to, I told him that I was disappointed that this happened. Luckily, I didn't lose my cool, and he explained that it wasn't the way it was perceived in the press, and there were a lot of other complexities that led to him using somebody else, and said, you know what, man, forget it. Bygones be bygones. Let's focus on the future. And since then, we've done some incredible things together, and we will continue to do that. And hopefully I'll help him sell that place one day and buy another place. But I think the lesson is again, just have thick skin, learn how to have these foundations to your relationships that they're not transactional. And if you don't get one deal, you'll get another. And just to have that vision and determination to not let up and keep a positive attitude.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to just dealing with failure.
Yeah.
Just how do you handle it? And there are so many people that I've seen, they go ballistic and because it's an emotional thing and they feel like they're not good enough or they didn't do it, like you said. So I think that's the key. So getting a new development, and then I just want to talk about your project before you go today for sure. And just sort of see what you're doing in real time. What should a new development agent, how long should they expect to work per week on a jump in new development? Like, what's the reality? Because when I sold new development, like everyone's like, oh, I want to do new, like it's a lot of work. It's nonstop.
7 days a week.
Okay. So just run me through that for the people who are thinking of getting into new development. Just go through like, how much should they expect to work and what's their main deal?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're a real estate agent, you're an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs don't stop working, Even when you're a very successful entrepreneur, it's like more money, more problems. You're going to keep needing to work more. So, your output is a direct result of what you're doing to generate business. So I would say just be prepared to work around the clock and devote every ounce of yourself to becoming successful in that career. And again, new agents, when I start them off on my team or I'm giving them advice in new development, learn everything. Be an ultimate expert on the project, on the developer, on the neighborhood, on the competition, on what's happening just in general in the economy in the city or the market that you're in. And the more answers that you have to clients' questions, a buyer is going to come into your sales gallery and ask you some of the most obscure questions you've ever heard in your life. So if you don't do the groundwork and learn this stuff front to back, every time you have to tell a client, let me find that out for you and I'll get back to you. Yeah. Now you've just moved the needle from closing the deal to not closing the deal. And every time you don't have an answer to one of those questions, that's a strike against you. So in order for you to establish trust, because when people come into sales galleries, they already have their guard up. Yeah. They're like, I know the drill. These people are going to try to sell me. They're very standoffish. Even if they're planning on buying something, they've got their guard up. They know they're entering into a sales engagement process. So, you have to find a way to put them at ease. And the best way to do that is to establish trust. So you do that by your education, knowing the product front to back. And that's the best way for you to start that.
How many meetings do you guys have per week, and how often are you communicating what's going on to your developer?
I mean, I'm in constant communication with my developer.
Never ends.
WhatsApping him on the way here. That never stops. There's never like a cutoff point. I've heard agents be like, "Oh, at 6 o'clock, I turn my phone off and that's it for the day."
Right. No,
If my developer calls me at midnight, I'm picking up the phone first ring.
Yeah.
These are people that are at the absolute peak of what they do. And, you know, I get inspired every time I have a conversation with my developer, who's Diego Ojeda of Ralea Group, who's an absolute phenomenal person and, you know, phenomenal businessman. But I think that your typical week looks like, you know, maybe you've got 10, 15 presentations a day. Some of those are with direct buyers. Some of them are with brokers who brought in a buyer. Some of those are maybe with 30 brokers at a time. And then we do events on top of that. And so it never really stops. You know, when you got to keep in mind that in new development, yes, you do get a lot of buyer walk-ins or direct buyer leads and things like that. But our bread and butter is the broker network. So building those relationships with brokers too is extremely important. If a broker has a client and they're shopping 4 or 5 different projects, they're bringing them to yours, they're expecting you're going to close their client.
Yeah.
And if you don't deliver, the next time they have a client, they're not bringing them to you. So
great point.
You know, you need to be very good and treat each one of those meetings like it's the most important part of your day.
Yeah.